Happy Wednesday, Dolphins. Welcome back to the PFN Miami Dolphins podcast. My name is Dolfreaky. I'm your co-host here with Adam Beasley once again for our weekly pod. We are just 1 week away now from the draft, so we have a lot to talk about. We did hear a little bit from Chris Greer this week at the press conference. So let's get into it. Adam, how are you?
I'm great. I'm just blinded by that shirt. I mean, for those that are listening, hopefully you watch on YouTube as well, but those of you listening, holy mackerel, what's going on?
This shirt is dope. It's actually a kid's shirt. I like to rock the kid styles because they're just so much better than the adult stuff. And yeah, big shout out. I think it was TJ Maxx that I got this shirt at. So I'm a big fan.
How tall are you, Dolfreaky?
What's that?
How tall are you?
I'm 5'1". I'm a little shorty. I don't know. People always think I'm tall for some reason, and then they meet me and they're like, "What? You're short?" I don't know.
Wearing the kid wardrobe, you can't be too tall to do that.
Yeah, no, I can fit in like the 14 to 16 kid sizes. So I often go to Burlington and like all those discount stores, and I pick through the kids racks, and I get lucky a lot.
Sadly, I cannot play that card. I am a bit larger than that, but I have lost a little weight, so I am trending.
Congratulations. A little weight loss is a good thing, yeah?
I see your workout videos on IG, and it inspires me. What can I say? Thank
you. I'm glad I can inspire someone. It's a continual grind, but I really just enjoy my workouts. It's my favorite part of the day. It keeps me just locked in and like in the right headspace before work or before whatever I'm doing. And it just feels so good to work out, like just get all the kinks out before the day. So I enjoy it. And, I share a little bit, like you're not going to see like full on exercise videos from me, but you'll see a little muscle selfie or something like that. So, those people who follow know.
Now, this is a professional broadcast segue. You know else who started working out this week?
Who did?
The Miami Dolphins did. How about that segue?
Hey, talk about voluntary workouts. That's awesome to see some of the guys getting back into it. It kind of makes it feel like, okay, like now we're officially in the season and we're getting ready to go. So yeah, I've seen some of our guys. I've seen our Tua slimming down. I've seen Achane bulking up. I've seen some things from Ramsey on YouTube about, the things that he's been doing in the off season. So all this stuff is good to see.
It's tough to keep track of all the social media platforms. I am largely a Twitter guy. Occasionally I'm on IG as well, but I don't do the snap face or whatever that is. And
I don't do that either.
The TikTok, are you a TikToker?
I watch TikToks, but I will say now that since all the reels are like in Instagram, you can get reels anywhere now. I haven't been actually opening my TikTok app as much, but I do because, I post a lot of promotional content for all different kinds of things. So I do occasionally post in TikTok, but it's not my strongest platform and I don't love it. And I love Instagram. I think that's like the most complete thing for me. And obviously Twitter, Twitter is just, crazy and wild, especially lately. Dolphins Twitter's been just so wild lately. If you know, so it keeps me entertained.
Wild wouldn't be the word I would use. Saucy, explicit, perhaps.
Explicit, for sure. Those are good adjectives. And there's a little bit of a sense of boredom within the Dolphin base, I think, right now. So like we're kind of resorting to other types of posts lately. If you know, you know.
Correct. If you know, you know. So for all of our listeners that don't follow you on social, are you at Dolfreaky everywhere? Is that what you all?
Yes, I am at Dolfreaky everywhere. So, I mean, my personal Twitter is much more tame than like some of the other ladies of Twitter, but that's intentional. Like a lot of people, might have a little bit more explicit content than I'm willing to provide, but mostly because I have to be professional for you guys. And, I don't necessarily want to do all that. So, but yeah, on Twitter, you can get any type of content you want these days.
Yes, Elon, it is now the wild, wild west. So we're going to keep things PG, if not PG-13 here at the PFN Miami Dolphins podcast. We're nothing if not professional. I wore a polo today. I actually combed my hair.
And we are football related every day, all day, which is all, it's a good point too, that like, obviously on Twitter, you're going to get your breaking news fast. And, PFN is a huge part of that too. And, breaking the news and, obviously like when we get press conferences and all these things, we have people like Adam that are able to get us the information first. So it's awesome.
Yeah, we had a lot of information this week. You mentioned the voluntary workouts began on Monday. It was great to see Tua there. He promised he would be. He's not holding out at all, and he can't really even hold out a voluntary workout, but he's not boycotting the voluntary workout, even though his contract situation is unresolved. And we actually kind of heard from Chris Greer on Tuesday about a whole host of things, including that. And it sounds like they're kind of in a holding pattern right now with Tua's contract. He and his agent understand that the priority is the draft at this point. My guess is after May 1, that'll ramp up again. But you got to love seeing Tua out there on the first day of voluntary minicamp. Or not minicamp, voluntary workouts.
Absolutely. And, we were talking a little bit about how, Tua's been working with John Beck. And you can obviously see that Tua is, very interested in working on himself. And I think that's, obviously an important quality of, a top tier quarterback and any player position. But, how much dedication you put into, beyond what's required is, very, very telling. So I'm not surprised at all that Tua's been given it everything.
Yeah. So he is, there's people are wondering why hasn't this contract yet gotten done. I think you see the natural timeline of these franchise quarterback contracts. They're usually in mid to late summer. So
it takes time.
If we're 3 months from now getting ready for training camp and a deal is not done, I think it's a much bigger story. Much bigger story. But for now, I don't think there's reason to be concerned.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, it was pretty obvious, they have been in talks, the discussions are underway, but Greer was very, adamant that, he's not going to discuss that publicly. And, what that's happening between, his agents and Tua and everything. So I guess we just need to be patient as fans and stop trying to rush everything as we like to do.
Correct. Me too, as a member of the media, I like instant gratification. We do have to be patient. It is interesting. We got some more details on him working with John Beck, and we asked Greer yesterday if it was the team pushing it or if it was Tua's idea. And he said, no, it was all Tua. Quote, and this is Chris Greer from yesterday. He's trying to do everything he can do to be great. We feel like there's a whole other step he can take, so we're excited about his future. So Mike McDaniel believes that we haven't seen the best of Tua Tagovailoa. Chris Greer believes we haven't seen the best of Tua Tagovailoa. And that should kind of instruct our opinions as to why it's so important for them to get this deal done. I know a lot of people on the outside are like, well, he's got a year left, fifth-year option, and then you're talking about potential franchise tag. If they wanted to string it out, could control his rights for the next 3 years. He wouldn't love that. The Dolphins wouldn't love that. Having a quarterback on a year-to-year isn't the best thing. But it sounds like the Dolphins do believe that he still has his best football in front of him, which is great because this guy's only 26 years old.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so much controversy too, within the fans of people speculating, is he qualified for a huge contract? We've seen some of these other, quarterbacks getting as of late, and you're going to see a lot of opinion pieces out there, and I know, I was watching Kay Adams this morning, and she was saying, you can't just look at, what he could do in the future, but look at what he's accomplished so far. So, she was pretty much in agreement with where I stand that, yes, he does deserve a huge contract, but obviously those things take time. I can only imagine the back and forths. I've never been in one of those sorts of engagements, as most fans probably haven't. So, we don't know what all that entails, but I'm here to support my quarterback, and whatever he gets, he deserves.
Yeah, I think you're probably going to be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $45-50 million a year.
Yep.
Guaranteed money of 120 to 150, somewhere in that range. And that's just honestly the cost of doing business. And it's not like the Dolphins are going to be hedging their bets. Chris Greer yesterday ruled out the idea. I know you've heard it whispered in some other places. Maybe they draft a quarterback in round one. That is not at all on the Dolphins' radar.
He shut that down. Yep. He said absolutely not.
Very quickly. So we do know the Dolphins are all in on Tua. You can have a difference of opinion. People in the fan base obviously do about whether or not that's the right choice. It is their choice. And that is the way they're moving forward. And for better or for worse, we're going to see the results of that choice. And the Dolphins are lifting the Lombardi Trophy in 2 years, or people are looking for jobs in 3. It's going to largely hinge on whether or not they get this decision with the quarterback right. And that's every team, to be honest. If you get the quarterback wrong, you're going to be looking for a job. And so far, especially with Mike McDaniel in place, they have seen growth year over year from the guy, and I expect him to take another step forward. The question is, around him, do the Dolphins have enough after their big purge? They did say that they're picking up the fifth-year option of both Jalen Waddle and Jalen Phillips. Look, and it's just great business to do both. You see the wide receiver market. Devontae Smith this week agreed to an extension that's going to pay him, I think, over the course of 5 years, between $90 and $100 million, 3 years of new money at $75 million total. That's $25 million AAV. So the Dolphins are going to be able to get Waddle in 2025 for far less than that. I think like 16, 17 is the range for his fifth-year option. And then Phillips, we'll see. I mean, his number is very low for the fifth-year option. It's only like $13 million. The only question with him is health. And we asked, because Phillips said over the weekend, I think he was at the not Pro Day, the Spring Game, that he is on track to start week 1. That's his plan. The Dolphins have yet to commit to that timeline, but they do believe that his best football is in front of him as well, and they're willing to pick up that fully guaranteed contract in 2025, which for a player, even with his young age and his great physical condition, an Achilles surgery is a big deal. So I think it's a show of faith from the Dolphins that they believe that he is part of their plans in 2025.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting to see that, Jalen, being so confident that he'll be ready for week 1. And, obviously all the fans want that, but the Dolphins were pretty adamant that, we're not putting any sort of timeline. We're not rushing anything. We're leaving this to his doctors. Greer even kind of made a little joke that Dr. Phillips, he obviously with most players, like they are really trying to get back to where they need to be as fast as possible. But let's just pump the brakes a little bit and let the doctors figure this out.
Yeah, I mean, we still have 5 months until the football season begins. All kinds of time. It does feel like it's starting, but there is just so much time for him to continue to his rehab. Two other quick bits of news before we get to the draft part of what Greer talked about. Nothing imminent on Odell Beckham, and I don't think that's a surprise. We've discussed this in the past that they're going to probably wait until after the draft to reassess their needs. They made an offer, they believe a good faith offer to Odell last month that wasn't to his liking. There's going to be a wide receiver that's going to need a job that, if the Dolphins need one, can get him at a discount. It's just supply and demand. This is such a good year in the draft for wide receivers that the players, the Boyds of the world, the OBJs of the world, the guys that still don't have jobs, they're kind of in a perilous spot right now because, we've talked and we'll talk more about how deep of a tackle draft this is. It's just as deep as a wide receiver draft. You can get a receiver almost in any round that's going to help you. And the top end is as good as we can remember. I mean, it's really, really, really good. So, I think the Dolphins are wise to not bet, compete against themselves and negotiate against themselves. For Odell, I mean, he's going to be there after the draft if they don't get who they like, and I think they'll reassess then.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of fans are kind of in my DMs like, have you heard anything about Odell? No, I don't have that sort of, inside information. Beasley's going to have it before I do. So everyone just chill. But yeah, I'm sure they'll definitely be assessing that after the draft.
Yeah. I mean, you see the Dolphins have brought in established veterans for visits beyond Odell. So I think a lot of these guys just have to wait and see how the draft shakes out. And one last thing, and this will kind of lead us into our draft conversation. The Dolphins are pretty much planning on this being Teron Armstead's last season. This year he obviously took his time to decide whether or not he wanted to retire. I think all signs are that I believe this is his 12th year will be his last, which is totally understandable. We've heard already that Kendall Lamb has said this will be his last season. So don't really need to opine on that. We all know how great of a player Teron is. We all know the struggles he's gone through to stay healthy. But I do think it's a good launching point for us to talk about how great of an opportunity the Dolphins have right now to address the tackle position long term. They don't need a starting tackle in 2024. They do need a guard still, at least one, probably a right guard. But they don't need a tackle right now. But with this being such a good and deep draft for tackles, it kind of, the stars are aligned. I mean, I'm not going to say they're definitely taking a tackle at 21, but I think if you're betting man or woman, they're the odds-on favorite. That position is the odds-on favorite for the Dolphins be their pick at 21.
Yeah, pretty interesting. Really good opportunity now to bring in some new guys, develop them for a year before we actually really, really need to have them on board.
Yeah, and the good thing for the Dolphins is, yes, they're not going to be in the positions to get the Alts of the world and the Shanos, and there's a lot of tackles that are going to go in the top 15 to top 20 that they're just not going to have a chance to get. But I do think that there are real options for them at 21. And I had a chance to chat today with Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Media. He had his 2-hour marathon conference call with members of the media to answer all of our questions. The guy's just a champion. He answered literally every question. I think 70 questions were asked today. And I got one in, so that's good. And I asked him which of these linemen that are out there, we went through in the last couple of weeks, makes the most sense for the Dolphins, considering where they are in the draft and what they look for. And he said the 2 tackles to him, these names should sound familiar to anyone who listens to the show, Washington's Joy Fatana, Alabama's J.C. Latham. Those are the 2 that I think have a real chance to be the Dolphins pick at 21. And I do think that they'll consider one other lineman, not necessarily a tackle, but Duke's Graham Barton, who can play all 5 positions. He probably projects best as a center. He would probably be their right guard this year, maybe for the next couple of years, but he could even play, as Daniel Jeremiah said, play left tackle in a pinch if they need him to. That's exactly the kind of versatility this team looks for. It's what they crave. And since they've gone through significant injury overhaul, upheaval over the last few years at that position group, he makes a lot of sense for the Dolphins as well. So I think if you're a Dolphins fan trying to really narrow down, it's tough at 21 because so many things are out of your control. These are the names that are really starting to come into focus for the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, and Greer kind of hinted that, there are teams calling now, talking about potentially moving positions around. So that's kind of interesting to know. And obviously those things start to ramp up as the draft gets closer. And, he says, during draft day, that's when a lot of those conversations start to come in, other teams calling, asking, to switch. So I'll be interested to see if we stay at 21 come draft day.
Yeah, so there's 2, lines of thought when it comes to trading. And there are only so many blue chip players in the draft. And Chris said yesterday that we don't have 21 players with first round grades. And I think that's fascinating. That means that if things all go against them, they're not going to like who they end up with at 21. The odds of that happening are close to 0. I mean, usually, almost always, to be honest, there are a handful of teams, not just one, but multiple teams that throw total curveballs. It can be even in the top 10, but even, 11 to 20, just teams overreaching for players. Their board looks much different than the Dolphins, that they will have someone shake out that they'll like. But if they're sitting there at 21 and it's 17, 18, and I forget where the Steelers are drafting, but it's not too much ahead of the Dolphins. They get intel the Steelers are hot and heavy on offensive linemen. The Bengals might need an offensive or defensive lineman the Dolphins could like. They want to jump one of those teams, they can do it. The problem is this, Allie, is that they don't have the picks to make up for it. They have the 21st pick, they have the 55th pick, and then they don't pick again in the top 150. They traded their 4th rounder. Was that part of the Tyree trade? It might have been. And they lost their 3rd rounder in a tampering investigation by the National Football League. So they lost their first 2023 and then their 3rd this year as way of punishment by the league. Thanks a lot, Steve Ross. So if you're the Dolphins looking to move up, you don't really have a whole lot of ammo to do it with. And if you do that, then you really have nothing in day 3. So my guess is if they do move, it'll move back. And they'll go from 21 to say 25 to 28, somewhere in that range, where they still have a pretty good sense that the player that they like, they can get. And then maybe they can recoup one of those mid-round picks they've lost.
Sure. Have you, by any chance, seen, it was the Detroit Lions special, Inside the Den, where they kind of went into what it's like in the draft room on draft day? I enjoyed it.
It advertised. I didn't watch it. Why? What really stood out to you?
I think it's just the intensity of the whole situation. They're kind of like on the edge of their chairs, and Coach Campbell, pacing around and jumping around. And when they make their pick, how excited they are. I really would love to see the Dolphins do something like that so that the fans can really get a feel of what it's like and what goes into those decisions. We're so quick to judge Chris Greer on his decisions, but you literally don't know what those conversations are behind the scenes and in the moment, and the phone calls that are coming in right then and there. I would love to see the Dolphins do a segment, just a little YouTube segment. It doesn't have to be long, but come on, Dolphins, let's do it.
It would take a Herculean effort, I think, on the behalf of Van Nolan, who runs communications department there with the Dolphins, because Chris Greer hates attention.
I know.
He hates attention. I mean, great guy. Really, really smart.
I don't blame him. I really don't.
He does not like being in the spotlight.
Yeah.
He doesn't talk at the scouting combine from the podium. He talks to us from the side simply because he doesn't like the car wash feel of it.
But everything he does is scrutinized by this fan base. So I really don't blame him at all for wanting to be as in hiding as possible.
Well, it's funny. We were talking in the media room after Greer on Tuesday, and I thought he was great. He's been great recently. And I kind of quipped, I was like, yeah, he's definitely better now that we've stopped calling for his job at every single press conference. He
seemed genuinely happy to see you guys.
Yeah. We had a great session with him at the combine. We talked at length with him yesterday. I think it went over 20 minutes. And he's not going to be totally candid. It's not in his interest to do so this close to the draft. But he doesn't lie to you either. If he's not, there's something he's not going to tell you, he's not going to tell you. But he's not one of these that plays the whole subterfuge game, or at least hasn't with me, hasn't publicly. I don't know, maybe behind the scenes with some of the national insiders. But no, I think he is a straight shooter. What he says carries a lot of weight. And you're right, there has been kind of a lighter air to him recently. But you know what? Going to the playoffs in back-to-back years kind of has that effect.
Oh, sure. And he did express that this is the time of year that he really enjoys. He enjoys the planning process and getting to build his new rosters. And, that excites him. So I'm sure he's just excited to get into it. Yeah,
and he's done himself a huge favor in that sometimes you go into these drafts and you're pigeonholed because you just didn't. You've got some bad needs that you didn't address during free agency. I don't really see that right now. Now, certainly there are. They need a number 3 wide receiver, and they need a starting right guard. But there are enough options. We talked about free agents still out there. We can go through the list that they don't. They can take any player at any position at 21, so long as it's good value. And that's what winning teams do. Winning teams don't draft for this year. They draft for the next 10 years. And it's entirely possible that if, say, they take a pass rusher like Letu or Verse out of Florida State, some of these bigger names that, if Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb both are healthy to start the season, you're not going to expect them to play more than 20, 25 snaps. But at some point, Bradley Chubb won't be there anymore. Shaq Barrett's a 1-year rental. If you can use it as kind of not a redshirt year, but a developmental year for a guy, no pressure, and you use him in spots and he brings some value to you here and there, that's what these really good teams do. And, early in my career, I worked for the Baltimore Ravens in their PR department. I wrote the stories for their website. And they had Shannon Sharp on their team, I believe, in 2001. And they still drafted Todd Heap because they knew that at some point Sharp would be gone and they would need a new tight end. That's kind of where the Dolphins are getting now. Tyreek Hill is not going to be here forever. If there's a receiver like Brian Thomas they love at 21, maybe that's the play for them. So I do think, and you've kind of felt a hint of optimism from Chris yesterday, that they're going to land a player that's really going to help them down the road. And this year, too, to some degree, but that's really going to be an impact player for them.
Yeah.
And that's no guarantee at 21. Like 21 is a tough spot to be in. Like you draft in late 20s, early 30s, unless you went all in, you made your run, and now you're totally retooling. You don't have a ton of needs because you just went to the Super Bowl. The Chiefs every single year are drafted late in the first round because they're so good. The Dolphins really aren't in that spot. They still need some impact players. And those guys usually go in the top 10, definitely the top 15. So if you're 21, it's kind of the in-between land. And I got the sense from him that they feel pretty good about where they're at and they're going to get a player that they like.
I got that sense as well. Do you think that we'll be hearing from Coach McDaniel before the draft?
No. We'll hear from him draft night after they make probably the end of the night. I think we'll hear from him then, and definitely at the end of the weekend. So there'll be a big week for us next week. Before we get too far in wrapping this up, I just wanted to say one thing. The draft, we've had free agency. We're going to have the draft. The talent acquisition process does not end really until cut down day. And so we mentioned Odell. I think he is one of several wide receivers that the Dolphins could consider if they don't get a WR3 in the draft. Tyler Boyd, I mentioned, it's kind of strange. He hasn't found a team yet from Cincinnati. Michael Thomas is out there, Hunter Renfrow, and McCole Hardman. I don't know how much they would love him, but there are options at wide receiver. I don't think they particularly need another running back, but you've got some big names like out there like J.K. Dobbins, Zeke Elliott, Dalvin Cook. I think those guys are a little too long in the tooth. But if they're going to, if they don't get with the 21st, and I think we shouldn't overlook the 55th pick too when it comes interior line. I mentioned Graham Barton I think he's probably the only one they would consider in round one, but there are a lot of plug and play guards and centers that don't have massive upside, but are going to be solid players for them. They'll consider them at 55. But if things, just go, the board doesn't fall the way they like and they don't get a guard in the first 2 days, Dalton Reisner's out there still. Greg Van Roten's out there. Mark Lewinsky's out there. Phil Haynes. So there are names out there in the guard market as well. And then center, we kind of think, Brewer's going to be their center, but if they like where Connor Williams is at from a physical standpoint, they want to bring him back, he'd be a name as well. I do think they probably need one more edge defender. And we mentioned, there's going to be options at 21. There'll be some options as well at 55. I doubt they'll bring back Agba. He is a name that's still out there. Yannick Ngakoue, we'll see. Carl Lawson, he had a visit to the Dolphins, and they kicked the tires on him. I think he's kind of in the same boat as Odell, that they'll still wait and see how the next 2 weeks go. And if there's a need still, I could absolutely see that happening. It's kind of wild that Xavier Howard's still out there at cornerback.
I know.
Stephon Gilmore, some of the bigger names, Patrick Peterson probably, his days might be over playing the NFL, but some of these bigger names of the last 5-10 years are still out there as well. So if the Dolphins need to make a DB move, Justin Simmons at safety, Marcus May, they're all Quandre Diggs. I think you're going to see them be very, very active after the draft. And the question is, can they get some of these guys to hold off until June 1? And June 1 is an important date for the Dolphins because that's when Xavier Howard's $18.5 million contract comes off their books. So that would free up. You can get some of these street free agents. You can get 3 or 4 street free agents for $18 million that can help your team. So they still have a lot of ways to improve their roster. And I think if you're a Dolphins fan, we talked about this early in free agency. There was a huge shell shock by the players they lost. A bunch of cuts, and then obviously Christian Wilkins, Robert Hunt, Andrew Van Ginkel right out the chute. But they've taken, they haven't been able to compete at the highest level of the draft, of free agency, simply because of where they're standing. But I think you got to give them some credit for building a complete roster with what they've had.
Yeah, absolutely. So the offseason never stays boring. We always have things to talk about, always news breaking. So I'm very excited for the draft. I'm, obviously preparing and packing and making sure I have everything that I need to go out there and represent the best I can.
Give me your itinerary one more time.
All right. So Thursday I fly out of Fort Myers and I get to Detroit. And then right off the bat, I have a luncheon with a couple fans of the year. This is just such a close knit family. So whenever we're in a situation where we can get together, we try to organize something. So we have a little luncheon somewhere in Detroit, I think Motor City, something or other. I don't know. I'm looking forward to eating on this trip.
That really narrows it down, Allie. Motor City somewhere.
I'm so going with the flow on this trip, but so that's my first scheduled thing. And then obviously we're going to go down to the draft area and, start partying and, getting ready to welcome in our new guys. So I'm very, very, very excited. And then there's a couple super fan parties throughout the weekend, and then I'll be going home Saturday night. So boo. But it must end at some point, but it's going to be a fun packed weekend and I'm sure very little sleep.
Do you have great seats for the draft? Do they have you right up front? We're going to see you on television?
No. So the Dolphins shafted me a little bit and I didn't get inner circle. So I'm just going to be general admission like everyone else. And I have no idea what the setup is going to be.
You're yesterday's news, Dolphin.
I am old news. Yes.
No longer the fan of the current year.
I know. It's crazy how that goes. They give you your prize and then you're just chopped liver. But no, honestly, just to be able to go there and represent the team is all I really need. So, I have a couple friends that are going out there with me. A couple of my guys from the Southwest Florida Dolphin Club are coming. Hubby is still on the fence. He's going to kill me for saying this on the air.
It sounds like you have big back-to-back weekends, right?
We do. He's going to be exhausted because we have a weekend in Miami this weekend for my cousin's wedding. Shout out to my girl Sarah. We're gonna cut up this weekend. It's going to be insane. So bachelorette parties tomorrow, and then rehearsal, wedding. There's like a 3-day extravaganza in Fort Lauderdale. So we have that, and then right back to back. I got to work like 3 days, and then off to the draft we go. So hubby's kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to swing it or not, but he's also, I don't know if you guys have seen, I'm not trying to go off on a tangent, but like all these airplanes like falling apart lately and like getting in accidents and all of the whole thing with Boeing. My husband is freaked out. He's like literally does not want to get on a plane right now. And I'm like, but it's the draft. Like, come on, we have to go. And he's like, I'm not getting on the plane without a Xanax. And I'm like, well, let's make it so because I want you to be there. I need all freaky security.
If only he knew someone in the pharmaceutical industry. That's all I'm saying.
If only. And I have, tons of doctor friends. We got it handled. He'll be all right. So we're looking forward to it.
Well, as a 45-year-old dad, you have way more fun than I do. Thank you for, rubbing it in how much cooler you are than I am. But
age has nothing to do with it. I would trade places with you for one day just so I could go to one of those press conferences.
Oh, yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm sure. I would love to do that.
I don't think I could pull off the wig like you could, though. So the Freaky Friday may not happen.
Be glad you're not bound to this like I am. Now it's part of my character, and I can't even separate from it if I wanted to. And, most people just don't understand the pain and the suffering involved with wearing wigs. And I do it for the fans. So don't you guys say I don't do anything for you.
Yeah, we're going to fast forward to 75-year-old Dolph Freaky, and she's still going to be rocking the pink wigs.
Of course. And hopefully by then we've won a Super Bowl. But I told my kids, I'm like, if I'm like 99 years old and the Dolphins finally make it to the Super Bowl, like you guys better dress me up right. Like, because they're going to see me and they're going to be like, that's Dolph Freaky. She's a legend. And I got to be looking right.
It might be awake. Where
I don't care. Okay. I don't care.
That you're viewing.
Dolph Freaky for life.
On that note, let's get out of here. It's always been a pleasure. 8 days for the draft. Yeah. Let's do this one more time before the draft.
All
How's
right.
that sound?
Let's do it.
All right. And make sure you subscribe everywhere that podcasts are available. Spotify. Where else? Apple?
Click the
where else
like button, subscribe so you don't miss any of the fun shenanigans.
Oh, and watch on YouTube. Our YouTube numbers are good. It's probably not because of me, but our YouTube numbers are good.
Yeah, because they want to see our pretty faces. It's not the same when you're just listening in the car.
Yeah, there's massive male audiences tuning in to see me.
You never know.
Very true. All right, I'll talk to you next week.
Take care, guys. Fins up.